think we'll go ahead and get started. I just wanted to clarify that is stay for the API, not the IPA. So if you're in the wrong room, yeah, sorry folks. Hi, my name is Michael Jones. I go by MJ, and you can find me at MJ Freshy Fresh pretty much everywhere, at Twitters, even at Salesforce. It's a long story how I got the email address. Really excited today to speak with you all a little bit about our AI team and ultimately about our APIs, which you all can all use for free today. I expect to see some awesome things that you build with that. We're going to have Zineb talk to you about that here in a bit. But before I get started, my attorney advised me to advise you to make all of your purchasing decisions based on our generally available software, not on this fancy stuff I'm about to show you, and you also might not want to trust a guy that goes by the name MJ Freshy Fresh. So, with that out of the way, I'm super curious. How many people have not seen this slide before? Not seen this slide? Okay, few. So, this is what we call the 4IR, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and that's where we are currently as a society. And I think this is kind of an interesting slide. I ask you how many people have not seen it because as Salesforce employees, we see this quite a bit, so I didn't want to bore you. But I think it's pretty interesting. It's sort of a historical look at different industrial revolutions. And as you can kind of see, we have the compute revolution, and that begat the intelligence revolution. I actually have a little twist on this slide that I want to show you all, but sort of frame this up in your mind. We had steam, we had electrical, we had compute, and then we had intelligence. Now, frame that as this, as an S-curve. And so you can take each of these industrial revolutions and essentially map them to an S-curve. So if we think about early days of steam and steel, we literally were trying to build steam engines to get things going. And we ultimately found out ways to harness that steam power, build trains, we found that fit, and then we had to scale it out. So we built railroad tracks everywhere. And then ultimately that was disrupted. And so each of these S-curves builds on another. And so I want to point this out because if you think about compute, early days when we were refining the technology, everybody might remember the command lines. And then we saw this product market fit, where compute really fit into society, and ultimately the scale, where everybody has a computer literally in their pocket. And so what's happened there is we now have massive compute, and since we're all connected, we're all producing a tremendous amount of data. And so what you can see, this ripe for disruption, what came after compute is intelligence. And that's where we are today, is in the era of intelligence, and we're there because we have massive compute and a massive amount of data. So I'm kind of curious to take a little audience poll here of, in the current state of artificial intelligence, where on the scale do folks think we are? So I'll just kind of run you through these 4 points. How many people think we're currently refining the technology around AI? Good. How many people think we're looking for product market fit right now? So, yeah, good. How about scale? Few. How many think we're ready for disruption already? All right, good. So it's people sort of spread out the spectrum. And I would agree with the spectrum. I think I love that quote of the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. I think that's pretty salient quote. I work in the laboratory with AI researchers, and for me, it sort of reminds me of like maybe being with Thomas Edison. And you can imagine Thomas Edison in his workspace with 2 wires, and he's laying a piece of wood across it, and nothing happens. A feather, ooh, it catches on fire, and then he lays a piece of metal, and he gets shocked. And that's kind of how I feel working with our AI research team. But instead of electricity, they're working on artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning. And so they're changing layers, they're tuning hyperparameters, and they're literally discovering the future. So I would put us more in the sort of refining and finding product market fit. There's still a tremendous amount of work to do in AI. I think we all sort of see the marketing, and we realize the marketing is a bit ahead of the technology, but I'd kind of put us here in refining it and finding product market fit. Product market fit is something you all can do. And so the tools that Zineb's going to walk you through are going to put AI power tools in your hands, and I would encourage you to start thinking about how can you find that product market fit. So moving on from S-curves, I talked to a lot of my friends about AI, and it's kind of interesting chatting with them. They're like, yeah, MJ, you go do your AI thing. Like, that's not for me. And so a lot of my friends don't think they're using AI. And so I start to ask them, I'm like, yeah, but when you replied to me on Gmail, that little reply, that's AI. Or when's the last time you were shopping on Amazon and you got a recommendation? Or who watched Netflix last night because it recommended a show to them? So ultimately, AI is here. Believe it or not, some people can't believe it, but it is already building into the fabric of our lives. It's helping us make decisions. It's helping us be more productive. And we see a ton of AI on the consumer side. If you look at all these examples, these are consumer-facing examples. So there's a tremendous amount of AI on the consumer side, and I would say AI is still promising to solve some of our business challenges in enterprise. But essentially, I'd say on the consumer side, we're seeing AI has made a lot of gains because of all the data. If you think about it, the massive amount of data at Twitter, the massive amount of data that Google has, that's why we're seeing so many advances on the consumer side. And we're seeing a lot of promise for AI to solve some of our business challenges. But it's hard. It's one thing on the consumer side, it's completely different on the enterprise side. And I think a lot of you are at large companies and understand the challenges. Like, first of all, the data. I mean, at your companies, you probably know you've got many distributed systems, and it seems like it should be easy to match up your inventory versus your sales, but that's not always the case. So on the enterprise side, we see a lot more data silos and data issues. So either not enough data, or they didn't store the data, or the data is not balanced, or is the wrong data. So in the enterprise space, data is a big challenge. There's also fewer AI breakthroughs there. There's less research focused on enterprise applications, because there's not a lot of data and not as much demand. And then finally, trust. It's one thing for your tweets to go out, but if this is your business critical information, you're not necessarily going to give that to somebody to go play with it in their AI model. So these are three things that are sort of creating friction for AI in the enterprise space. And so at Salesforce, actually I'd say it's Mark Benioff. Mark maybe is on his island or he's on a beach somewhere. Who knows where he's doing his deep thinking. But essentially Mark was thinking about how can we accelerate AI development in the enterprise space? How can we drive more AI advances for the enterprise? And so, Mark, it's classic Mark. He thinks big. He's like, let's create a Salesforce research team. And so that's what's happened. So those of you that have watched our acquisitions, March 2016, we acquired a company called MetaMind. And that really gave us a lot of capabilities in the deep learning space. And so we now have an AI research team, which we'll unpack a little bit further. But essentially, this is what makes us different. And so one is we're focused on AI for the CRM. So we're focusing on AI for the enterprise. The other thing is we are integrating it directly into the platform. I know a lot of you all here are developers. You enjoy APIs. That's probably why you showed up. You like building stuff. But a lot of the community doesn't. They don't know how to do that. They just want the AI right there where they do their work. And so we're embedding it directly into the platform. And finally, it's trusted, transparent, and ethical. And that's massive for businesses. If you're in healthcare, if you're in finance, if you don't have the trust of your customer, you have nothing. And so very focused on trusted, transparency, helping you understand our models, and then ethical. Should it be used in that manner? So ultimately, the way we're driving advances in AI for the enterprise is we've created our own research team, and this is how we differentiate against other research teams. We're actually led by Richard Socher. He's actually my boss, and oh my gosh, I'm so excited to work with this guy. I wanted to point out one of his tweets. I guess, does anybody follow Richard on Twitter? All right, we got a couple. I would encourage you to. It's at Richard Socher. He's an adventurous guy. Grew up in Germany, was a professor at Stanford. He's now based down in Palo Alto, although he travels all over the world. I love this tweet from him. So paramotoring is essentially you put a big old parachute on and you strap a fan onto your back. So that's the level of adventure that this guy gets into. But in this one tweet here, he talks about he was going to go paramotoring and there's nobody else around. So he's in a new territory, new space. So what does he do? He starts with data collection. He sets up a streamer so he can measure the wind currents and see where things are going. Ultimately, then he takes off and flies. And I think that sort of epitomizes a trailblazer. This is somebody that's going somewhere where people have not gone before, and they start to analyze the situation, and they ultimately go out and take that leap. And so I thought this tweet really sums up Richard's personality, super fun guy to work with. This one quote from the World Economic Forum, I also really like this. They say he's one of the prodigies of artificial intelligence in the deep learning space whose breakthrough technologies are transforming natural language processing and computer vision. And that's really what he's doing. So essentially, deep learning has been around for a long time, started in the 60s. And so that is something that Richard got very interested in. So what he did, what was unique, is whereas most natural language processing was not using deep learning, he started to incorporate deep learning into natural language processing, and he's able to drive some amazing results. And he shared a story with me where he said, yes, I was going to this natural language processing convention, because he's an academic researcher, publishing papers, sharing the information, and he said they rejected his application because they said deep learning doesn't belong in natural language processing. And so this was years ago, and now today, of course, we see deep learning all over NLP, and actually some of the major advances that we've seen in computer vision and natural language processing are by using deep learning. A lot of people ask the question of like, well, that's great, you guys have an AI research team, but what does that mean for the product? Like, how do you all sort of operationalize AI? And so this is a little diagram that sort of gives you a little insight into like how we actually incorporate AI into our products. And I would point out this is a cycle. I don't want you to think everything starts at research and doesn't always start at engineering a product. Ultimately, people from all over our company will come to us. They'll come to the research team. They'll say, MJ, do you think this is possible? Or do you think we could do better than this? So people come and bring challenges, and ultimately that's where research focuses. Research focuses on solving the unsolvable, of coming up with new novel approaches to drive better results. So ultimately, research will take a challenge and they'll come up with a new algorithm to solve it. From there, it goes over to our engineering teams, and I think they have one of the hardest jobs here at Salesforce, because it's one thing to do something in the laboratory, something completely different to do it for 150,000 customers. So the engineering team is taking those AI breakthroughs and then scaling it out so that it meets our high bar of trust and so that our 150,000 plus customers can take advantage of it. Finally, it's back to our product teams. Because as you all know, Salesforce has a lot of software, right? Sales, service, marketing, the whole gamut. And so I'm not an expert in all those domains, but our product managers are, our product leaders are. Ultimately, they're the ones that know that space. They know you all as customers. They know the challenges you face. So it's ultimately the product teams that help us best incorporate AI directly into the application. And of course, all this is done in a very ethical manner. We actually have a chief ethical architect. Her name is Kathy Baxter. She sits with the research team. So literally, as we're creating this AI, she's helping us ask those hard questions of how could this be misused? Where did the training data come from? Was it trained on humans, et cetera? And so ultimately, we start with that research and the ethical grounding, and it goes throughout the whole process. So this is just a little bit about how we've operationalized AI. As far as the teams, I say the AI research team, there's actually 3 research teams. And so we have an academic research team. The academic research team is essentially publishing papers, breaking state of the art, and going to conferences to talk about that, to share that. And I love this group because I feel like this group doesn't necessarily work for Salesforce, they work for the world. I really see AI as not an individual company thing, but I see it as something we're doing together as society. It is that transformational. And so this team is taking that intelligence that they've created, and they're essentially giving it out to the world. And so we've seen our research absolutely impact Salesforce, but we've seen other companies incorporate our research into their organizations as well. So the academic research team is focused on solving the unsolvable, sharing that knowledge so the world can move forward in AI. The second group is applied research. Think of applied research where research meets product. And so I get really excited about this one because this is research having an impact with our customers. So for instance, a lot of the Einstein voice and vision, we continue to iterate on that. They'll say, hey, yeah, the voice works well in this, but it won't work in this situation. Can you all help solve that? So our applied research teams are ultimately taking AI, but doing it directly in the product and helping solve it directly in the product. And then finally, the third flavor of research is our AI for Good program. And so our AI for Good program is something I work on, I'm very passionate about, and this is one of the reasons I love being at Salesforce. AI for Good, we're essentially taking artificial intelligence and we're trying to create a better world with it. And I'm going to share one of those projects with you. Ultimately, the applied research and the AI for Good research goes up through our AI engineering, and then I put Salesforce applications on the top because Salesforce is taking advantage of all this different research that we're doing, ultimately delivering it to our customers. Academic. So this is what our academic research team is publishing. I don't expect you to be able to read that from here. Even if you could read it, not sure that many people would understand it. I do struggle with some of these papers. If you do read a lot of academic papers, or if you're interested in that, I would encourage you to go dig into it. It's a website called Archive, and just start with the abstract. Usually the abstracts are pretty digestible, but pretty much any interest you may have, there are papers that are being published on that. And so I would encourage you all to take advantage of this amazing research of the academic, the amazing value of academic research that's available online for free. So our team is publishing these papers, going to conferences, and helping move the world forward. Our applied research, these are some examples of where our applied research team is really focusing on improving the technologies or creating new technologies for our customers, such as voice, vision, OCR, which is optical character recognition. And then finally, our AI for Good. This is one of our programs. Zineb and I spoke about this yesterday at 9 a.m. I didn't see too many of you all there, but it was well received. In this program, what we're actually doing is we're counting sharks. So there's now an unprecedented number of great white sharks off the coast of the United States. And so this leaves marine biologists scratching their head wondering why, because there's not a great source of data for that, and it leaves the general public a little bit concerned to get in the water. So in this bit of research, we've actually pioneered some Einstein Vision capabilities. We have certified drone pilots, and they're running daily collections down off the coast of California. Our AI is counting the sharks, and we're supplying that information back to the marine biologists to better study the phenomenon. So that's just a quick peek of our AI for Good program. Ultimately, our AI is going directly into our platform. And so these are some examples. You might ask, so, okay, MJ, so you got that research team. What are some specific things you all have done? This is a good little slide that sort of shows you that. So we've done a lot with Service Cloud, and we're continuing to work very closely with Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, marketing, and ultimately Einstein platform. But this is directly where our research has gone into the product. Many of you may be using these features today. As far as numbers, these are a little bit out of date. I'm sorry about that. They are bigger, but I do like this slide. I think this is an interesting slide because this talks about research. So on the left-hand side, this is really academic research. This is our team. They published 32 papers. There's actually a lot more now, but essentially that's academic research publishing papers. And then the cool thing is, as we publish those papers, other people learn from it and leverage it. And that's the citations. How many people are citing our work, building on top of that. Then on the other side of this slide, this is actually product. So those papers begat this product. For instance, we've classified over 200 million images now. So we're helping marketers understand what's in those photographs, what's in the background, what's the food, what other objects, where are the logos. And then finally, over 2 million chats via Einstein chatbots. So Einstein chatbots, that's used in a lot of our natural language processing. So I really like this slide because it talks about academic side, but also product. And so with that, I want to bring up on stage Zineb Laraki, also known as Z. She's a product manager on our research team.
Thanks, MJ.
Thank you, Z.
Cool. So I'm actually going to focus on 3 areas that our team works on. So we're going to talk a little bit about vision, language, and then voice. So if we look into vision, maybe just to set the stage here, a lot of the information that we as humans process, 90% of the information that we process, our brain processes, is actually visual information. And one of the cool things that we're doing with AI is teaching computers to understand images and videos. And this is actually currently being used. All of you guys are using this, whether it's on your phone, being able to unlock it, using recommendations. So computer vision is something that we are all using in our consumer lives. And what we're excited is about bringing that to the enterprise space. And our research team, as MJ was mentioning, is advancing the state of the art in computer vision. 3 examples that you have listed here is visual search, visual question and answering, and object detection. So I'll go into each one of these and explain a little bit more what these entail. So for visual description, what we did was we looked at providing a model with an image and having the model describe it in natural language. And one of the interesting things that we were able to do here is really look under the black box, if you will, of understanding where the model was paying attention. So the first image that you see here, a little girl sitting on a bench holding an umbrella, you can see that at different times, the model is focusing on different parts of the image. So you can see when it's generating girl, it's focusing on the girl in the image. And so really kind of understanding a little bit more how the models are understanding what's in the picture. For visual question and answering, what the team looked at is basically, once again, providing the model with an image and a question and seeing if the model could provide a response. And so what's really interesting here is that, there's questions that you can ask that can have like general answers, right? So for example, what color are the bananas, right? You'd expect it to probably say yellow, right? Because that's generally what colors the bananas are. But given the specific picture that we provided, you can see here that it's able to focus and figure out where the bananas are in the image and actually respond that they're green. Another interesting use case is looking at object detection. So object detection is the ability to have models understand multiple objects within an image. And so we're working with our research team to optimize these models to train them with less images and really help our customers derive value. And that's actually one of the things that we have available in the computer vision side is we take the latest and greatest advances from the research team and make them accessible to our customers. And so in the computer vision space, we have two services that are generally available for you to use. So we have Einstein image classification. So what that allows you to do is basically define categories, and then given an image, it'll tell you which category the image belongs to. Then we also have object detection. And as I mentioned, that allows you to train a model to understand objects within an image. And so you can define products or product parts, and then given an image, it'll understand where, it'll provide you the bounding boxes, so the relative size and counts of these objects in the image. And these are simple to use REST APIs that are available for you, and I'll go into a little bit later how to use them. But really, what we're seeing is that we've made them accessible, and customers are right now using them to really change their workflows, streamline and automate their tasks, and derive value for their users. So we're seeing clouds integrate these into their applications. So Social Studios, which is part of Marketing Cloud, we worked with them to integrate image classification. We helped them build a global model to understand scenes. And so now it allows their customers to understand Twitter images and understand their products. Are they being taken pictures at the beach or in the boardroom, for example? In sales and service, we're seeing customers looking to automate and streamline sales and service by allowing their customers to take pictures of products or product parts. So for example, if I'm a field service technician, and my inventory is huge, instead of having to learn all the different parts and how to fix them, or even what parts I need to fix, you're able to just take a picture and get that part description, the how-to guide, potentially not even needing to send a field sales rep, allowing the end customer, the end user to take a picture and then just automatically send them the parts or the products that needs to be replaced. In the insurance space, we're seeing customers leverage this technology to understand severity of damage. So both for insurance claims as well as for lease returns, being able to simply take a picture and streamline that whole flow there. And then finally, in retail, we're seeing customers use computer vision or object detection to understand products on an aisle. So right now, a lot of consumer good companies, they send people out in the stores to do store audits, to make sure that the products are looking the way that they would like them to look, the way that they're paying for them to look in the store. And so now with object detection, these store audits can be extremely streamlined. Instead of having to manually go and count and compare, you simply take a picture and you can understand the on-shelf availability, automatically calculate share of shelf, and planogram compliance. And these are just a few examples that I'm showing here, and I'm really excited to hear, maybe after this talk, about interesting applications that you guys would want to use computer vision for. So with that, I'm going to move to talk a little bit about language. So as humans, we do multiple tasks to understand each other, right? To understand the language when we're communicating. So we do sentiment analysis. So when someone's talking, understanding, are they happy or not? Are they anxious, grumpy, etc.? We basically look at the intent. We also take into account context, right? So there's a lot of tasks that we're doing at the same time. Now, natural language processing is basically training machines to be able to understand language. And so NLP consists of both natural language understanding, or NLU, as well as natural language generation. So one is understanding written text and one is generating it. And our research team, once again, is really looking to advance the state of the art in natural language processing. And really how the NLP world is defined right now is different tasks and breaking up the different things that we do as humans simultaneously into different tasks. So you would have one model that does sentiment analysis, another model that does like intent, another model that might do question and answering, et cetera. And so our team is working on advancing, different tasks here. One example, we're doing a lot of work in summarization as well as question and answering. And one of the things that I'm most excited about that we're really doing in the natural language space is really this multitask NLP. And so Brian, one of the research scientists on our team, is like, why not have one model that can do multiple tasks? And worked on this model here called multitask question answering that can do 10 of the NLP tasks that we saw before. So whereas before you needed 10 different models, we're now able to combine it to have one model that can do multiple of these tasks. So with that, we then once again leverage these advances in the latest state of the art to provide services for you guys to leverage. And so the first few services that we have available in the NLP space are sentiment. So sentiment basically allows you to give it a piece of text, and it'll tell you if it's positive, negative, or neutral. And Einstein intent allows you to basically define different categories, and then given a piece of text, will tell you which category it belongs to. And once again, these are simple to use REST APIs, and I'll go into later in this talk how to use these to train your own models. We made it really easy and accessible. There's actually somebody at Salesforce that had their 10-year-old use these models to train their own models. So we'll look at that in a second. Just to give you guys a few examples of how customers are leveraging these technologies, we have people in service looking to streamline support. So if you guys heard of Salesforce chatbots, that's leveraging the NLP that we just looked at. Einstein Voice Assistant, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about that. It was one of the big announcements at Dreamforce this year. That also leverages the same NLP services that are available for you to leverage as well directly. We have customers looking at automatic triaging of cases. So when a case comes in, understanding the intent and routing it to the right department or support agent. And then we also have customers looking at analyzing surveys and the sentiment in the surveys. And so once again, these are just a few examples. I'm really looking forward to hearing kind of additional use cases that you guys are interested in leveraging these technologies for. So last but not least, let's touch on voice. So voice, is really what we'd say kind of the next big way to interact or converse with computers, right? If you kind of look at the history of how humans interacted with machines, we started with like command lines, and then we have point and click, right? And now with the iPads and iPhones, you can simply touch. And as we're kind of moving up, it makes it more and more accessible, right? And now we're really at the ability to interact using our voice with machines to get answers that we need. And once again, you see the requirements needed to be able to interact have diminished, right? It's like even children now can help interact with our machines. And so we're seeing this being used both in the consumer space as well as in the workforce. And so I'm sure many of you at this point have asked Alexa to play a song or ask what the weather is like. And so we've seen this trend and realized how helpful that is to be able to streamline the ability to communicate verbally with our devices. And so that's really where our team came in and was like, okay, how do we apply the same ability to verbally communicate with machines in the CRM space or for businesses. And so there's a few challenges that we need to consider that are a little different when looking at in the enterprise space versus consumer space, right? So one of the things that's interesting to think about is that in the enterprise space, we have very domain-specific terminology, right? So whereas in the consumer space, we kind of all share the same lexicon, in your specific industry or specific organization, you might have vocabulary or acronyms that you use. Here at Salesforce, for example, we have like V2MOM or all these different acronyms that we have that we would expect to be able to converse with, to be able to use as well. And so that's an interesting challenge that we need to address. The next one is the audio environments, right? So when you're at home, you can turn down the volume, you can ask your children to hush down, but if you're in a workspace, that's not always possible, right? If you're on a construction site, you can't really control the volume. If you're on a sales floor, there's just different constraints that we have to work with in terms of the audio environments. And then finally, MJ was alluding to the privacy and trust. That's something that we hold, at Salesforce as something that's very important. It's having your tweets being used is very different than having your confidential information. And so really thinking about how do we uphold the privacy and trust standards that we have here at Salesforce, even when we're looking at building voice models. And so with that, we were able to, even with a small team and focusing on CRM use cases, enterprise use cases, really work on producing voice models that are on par, if not better, given the domains that we're looking at. And so now what we're doing is we're integrating these into services. So eventually these will be available in API form in similar ways that we're doing with voice and, with vision and language. But for now, really what we're doing is integrating them into our applications. And so really allowing you to leverage these voice functionalities to interact with Salesforce. And so Einstein Voice Assistant is basically the first product that we have available that allows you to do that. And so just to kind of dig a little deeper here on how it works, the voice transcription, or the ASR, is one component, and it's kind of the first step. So when you talk to Einstein Voice Assistant, the first thing it does is it uses a voice model to transcribe what you're saying. And then after that, it uses the NLP that we were talking about earlier, right? So the intent or name entity recognition to really understand the context of the language that's being used. Then it's able to pull in the context or use state management to understand, the relevance of what you're talking about. And then eventually, we're able to then use that to update your CRM, right? So now what you're able to do with Einstein Voice Assistant is simply talk to your phone in a natural way and have it understand any updates or tasks you want created and have that reflected directly into your CRM use case. So with that, I'd like to take a few seconds here to kind of walk you guys through how to leverage the APIs that I was referring to earlier. So both vision and language are available as simple REST APIs. And we actually even have a UI that's available in App Exchange. So you can even use them using clicks instead of code. But in general, you kind of go through the similar process. The first thing is you need to sign up. So on Einstein.ai, these are free services. You can get started with a POC for free. So you can sign up and download the package from App Exchange. And then the second step, which is a very important step, is defining your use case. What is it that you want to achieve with language or voice? What is the business process that you're trying to streamline or automate? The next step is creating your data sets. So once you've defined what's the use case that you want to address, then you need to collect the data. If you're lucky, you might already have the data and you just need to QA it or make sure that it's labeled correctly and you're able to use it. A lot of people don't have the data, and what I tell people is this seems like a big hurdle to overcome, but really just get started. Sometimes just sitting down and generating the data or going out and taking the pictures is enough to get you started and really get a proof of concept. So don't be scared if you don't have the data available. Like, I know it's nobody's job to do this, but really just don't let that be a hurdle for you. Just figure out how to get that data. It's often easier than what you think. You often need less data than what you think to get started. So once you have your data and it's labeled, the next steps are really easy. You basically just upload your data using the APIs or the UI. You click a button or make a call to train, and that's it. Your model is trained, and you have a deep learning model that now understands the categories that you've defined, so both in vision or language. And one of the cool things that we do is we also provide you with the model metrics. So we make it very easy for you to understand how your model is performing. And so at that point, you can start getting predictions. And so give it new images or new text that the model has never seen before and see what it's predicting. And there's a very important step here which is called the feedback loop, right? So both before you put it into production as well as after, you want to make sure that your model is always improving over time. So anytime that it's getting anything wrong, you want to save that and use our feedback API to tell the model, here's the correct thing, so that next time it sees this, it's able to correctly predict that. Oh, sorry. So we make it very easy for you to get started. I just gave you kind of a high-level overview. As I mentioned, you can sign up on Einstein.ai. It's free to get started, so I encourage you all to go ahead and try it out. We have a UI for you available on App Exchange. So if you just look for Einstein Vision and language on the App Exchange, you'll be able to download the UI, and there's instructions available as well. And then we also have getting started guides and packages available to kind of really handhold you and walk you through this process. Really, our aim here is to make this as easy and accessible to everyone, and so we're really excited to have you guys try it out and see what interesting use cases you come up with. And with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Z. So there you have it, folks. We've got natural language processing. We got computer vision. They're available there, well documented, free. I believe it's 2,000 calls per month.
Yep.
So there's no excuse not to go play with those. Ultimately, I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. So I encourage you all to work together, dream big, and go create a better future with AI. Thank you very much. And we will have, we have a couple minutes, so we can take questions at the mic, or if you just want to come up and have a casual conversation, more than happy to answer anything you have. Thank you.